quite a scattered career, to be honest. So I've been at NEMA for a couple of years, and before that I was at Auckland Council for about 4 years in policy. And outside of that, I've done a bit of park rangering in Fiordland National Park and Long Bay Regional Park, both very different places if you know them both. And my volunteering experience has been around Special Olympics, the New Zealand Heart Foundation, the Auckland City Mission, and then Chuck D Women's Refuge. I've also volunteered for the Auckland Emergency Management during Cyclone Gabriel, and that's what led me to start working at NEMA because I was so passionate about it. I think it's a really interesting and important space. So I did have a look at why you came along today, and that was what I got from the data was that you want to be more prepared for emergencies, to train your volunteers to help them comply with health and safety, general interest, and then networking and connection, as well as recruitment and retention and sustained engagement. I will just say and caveat, my experience is not so much that I will be able to help with maybe the last two, but I'll try my best to speak to the top 5 there. So today we'll cover our role and the national context, emergency preparedness essentials, practical applications for your organisations, and then some shared learnings at the end and an opportunity for question and answers. Cool. So I'll get into it straight away. So first of all, our role. So NEMA is the National Emergency Management Agency, and you can think of us as the people who look after the big picture in an emergency. So a major part of what we do is leading the national response when there's a significant natural hazard event, for example, Christchurch earthquakes or Cyclone Gabriel. But we also help with smaller events if they affect a lot of regions at once. And a good example of that was the severe weather sequence we had at the beginning of this year. That was around Northland, Auckland, Tairāwhiti, and the Coromandel as well. It's also important to note that we're only the lead agency for natural hazards and infrastructure failure. We're not for other events, and examples of those would be a major fire. The lead agency is FENZ. A terrorist attack, the police is the lead agency. And because it's topical, the lead agency for a fuel disruption or a fuel supply issue is actually the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, MB, who are leading that at the moment. In a national response, we do this from what is called the National Crisis Management Centre. It's also known as the Beehive Bunker because it sits underneath the Beehive in Wellington. And this is an independent bunker with its own power, water and air filtration system. It has an independent IT and telecoms network, emergency food stores, sleeping and first aid facilities, and a cafeteria that can feed up to 100 people. And we activate this for major national events, but also to support local emergencies. And I put it in here just because it's about to be disestablished because it's not fit for purpose at the moment. So there's a new building going in behind Parliament and we're about to go into there instead. But if you ever find yourself in Wellington and you want to see the bunker, please let me know because we can always give people tours as well. It's quite an interesting place and good to do before it's disestablished because soon we won't be able to offer those tours. My details at the end of the slides, and so you can get that off me. I put this slide in here just to show what we do and what we don't do because it does get confusing, to be honest. It's quite a complex space. So some of the things we do outside of response is to support our local councils and civil defence groups. We also help the country get ready before emergencies. What we don't do are run local emergency responses. We don't manage volunteers directly. We don't do things like running emergency services or replacing local risk reduction and things. This is the role of what we call the civil defence groups and councils. So New Zealand's emergency management system is built around civil defence groups, each covering one region. And the groups are made up of the regional council, the district and the city councils, and then emergency services. And lifeline utilities, government agencies, iwi, and community groups such as yourself, so your volunteering groups all come into the community level. And you may be familiar with them, I hope that you are. These are all of them here. Some of you may be from our emergency management groups. I'd be keen to hear from you today as well if you are. and they're the regional backbone of civil defence in New Zealand, and they coordinate how each region prepares for, responds to, and then recovers from emergencies in New Zealand. We as NEMA try and provide more of a system view, and we try and make sure the whole country is working together during emergencies and provide things like surge support and extra assistance in major events. So I just wanted to take this time as well to talk about our approach to volunteer groups. So we try and support in any way that we can, but this is largely the role of our civil defence groups themselves, which often also have very limited resources to manage volunteers. And this is partly because civil defence group funding is determined by each of its councils, which are always dealing with competing priorities. As is the nature of volunteering, as you all know, the coordination of people can be hard to manage. It's even harder in emergency events when volunteers are spontaneous. So that's a big part of emergency management, is spontaneous volunteering. It's something we're actively looking to be better at the moment, but it's very hard. So I would say if you want to be more involved in civil defence, the best thing you can do is to get in touch with the groups, but also realise that they may not have the capacity to coordinate volunteers sometimes, and this is something we're all trying to be better at. Alrighty. So we're going to move into emergency preparedness. And if you have any questions, feel free to just ask them at the end or in the chat, I think, as Heidi said. So before I get started, I'm just going to have some water. So emergencies are changing in New Zealand, first and foremost. We're a very hazard-ridden country. It's what makes working in emergency management interesting, but also really difficult. So what we're seeing as a country, and I'm sure you've all seen it, we're seeing more frequent and more intense events. And so preparedness, I think, in 2026 is, it's not a nice to have anymore, it's actually an essential. And the first thing you need to do is to know your risk. So know where your hazards are, where you live, where you work, and where you volunteer. Every community has different hazards. Some are more prone to tsunami, some more flooding, some wildfire, some landslides. You can find out more about these on our website, Get Ready, which leads me to my second point, is make sure you're okay first. So it might be very obvious, but if you and your volunteers are safe and prepared at home, you're more able to help others. So we say everyone should be able to look after themselves for at least 3 days. And good preparedness also means you have your own grab bags, medicines, and supplies. And your organisation should generally always have emergency supplies on site, though this is difficult sometimes, and we understand that. Once you know your risk, you're prepared, then you should start thinking about your organisations yourself. Excuse me. So this is a good time to think about what might happen in your organisation during an emergency. The power may go out. Your volunteers may not be able to access premises. More people may need your services if you're community facing. And I might take this time now. Before we head into breakout rooms. If you start thinking about what happens inside your organisations, and at the same time, I've put in this slide to show New Zealand's riskscape over the next 50 years. And that's what we may expect. So, not to scare anyone, but there's a 75% chance the Alpine fault will go in the next 50 years, and that's at a magnitude 8 or more. That's a massive earthquake, and the Alpine fault affects the South Island. Amongst that, we've also got risks of volcanic eruptions, space weather events, which you can look up online. I don't have time to go into space weather today. And also flooding, a Cyclone Gabrielle equivalent event, that's got quite a high percentage at 80% of likelihood in the next 50 years. All of these different things affect different parts of the country. And so what I want to encourage you to do is to look at where you live, because everyone's from different places in New Zealand. And how does that affect you personally, but also your organisations? So we'll split out, if that's all right, Heidi. into some breakout groups. Think about those 2 questions. We'll do about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back together and we'll speak to those if that sounds all right.
Cool. I'm going to put 3 in each room. You don't have to go in a breakout if you don't want to. You're welcome to stay in the main room with us. And I'll give you till about 3:23, and you'll get a minute's warning when their room's about to close. Obviously, introduce yourselves to each other, what your name is, what your job is, and what your organisation is, and then work on those questions as a group. What might be helpful, Kelsey, if you could just paste those into the chat so they can see the questions when they're in the breakout, that would be really helpful. So if you want to go in a breakout room, just click join button and I'll put you into a room. There we go. There might be 2 in some room, 3 in others. Not a problem. Make some new friends and we'll see you in 10 minutes. Did you want to? I'll pass back over to you.
Alrighty, welcome back. So I hope you had some good discussions within your group. Does anyone want to kick us off? Sorry, I don't have the groups in front of me or their names. That was anyone wanting to report back on what they talked about, those being what are the major hazards in your region and are you prepared for those both personally and in your organisation? Or if you would rather post in the chat, go for it.
We briefly talked about what our hazards were in our area, but everything's quite unpredictable. Like you just don't know at what extent it is, and so the real emphasis is on that preparedness that you talked about earlier, and that if we can look after ourselves as much as we can, then we are able to then not be reliant on somebody else coming and helping us, and people will come and look after you once they know what's happened. So there's always that depends, but yeah, I think and we talked about things like reminding people, like knowing what other people's plans are in an emergency, so that your workmates or your colleagues or your volunteers, if what they would do, or if they have children to pick up, or if they have a pet at home, and you do that with your neighbours. And it's just that old New Zealand thing, really, of looking out for each other. We shared the information about using daylight saving as a way of reminding you to check your water supplies, check your food supplies, if you take things in and out of your go bag, what you do. Having stuff in your car, like to be prepared that you're not going to get home, so that you can do those sorts of things. I think that
Fantastic.
was all we covered.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. That's fantastic, and she's absolutely right. If you're prepared yourself, you don't put that pressure on emergency services during an emergency. We were also speaking about pet food as one people often forget for their pets as well.
Kirsty,
anyone?
Sorry,
Yes.
Kirsty, you had your hand raised there. Did you want to speak to the room?
I was in the same group as Karen and she covered it all. But thank you.
Cool.
In our group, we had Auckland and Christchurch, was it, involved? And similar risks involve across the regions, flooding, severe weather, earthquakes, all of that sort of stuff. But we did talk about while it's good to look after ourselves, and it's essential to look after ourselves in the first instance, once we've looked after ourselves, we then become part of the wider available community. And if we all just look at our own organisations instead of volunteer coordination across the whole region or motu, depending on how big it is, then there's the risk that people are being contacted by up to 8 or 9 organisations saying, are you available? Are you here? Are you not available? What do you need, etc. And so really just a reminder that there are volunteer centres in 17 regions around Aotearoa, New Zealand, who do this on a daily basis, and don't forget they're there.
Absolutely right, Kate. Yeah, and the duplication of effort sometimes in emergencies can be quite tiresome for the communities themselves, as I've seen at least. And that's where that coordination piece, from my perspective, comes in with NEMA, is to try and make that better for us to have more visibility and transparency over what each person is doing.
We've got a comment here from Brent. Thank you, Brent. Common hazards across our group were flooding, weather events, coastal concerns for those of us next to the coast, and earthquakes. Of discovery in our thinking was that volunteers are frequently spread across several volunteer organisations, as Kate touched on, so maybe checked in or called on by help by multiple organisations needing them. We've all turned our organisations' minds to disaster preparedness. So reiterating what you said there, Kate.
Fantastic point. Yeah, I didn't realise actually how many of you may play across multiple roles. Was there anything else that people wanted to contribute? Or any other thoughts or things you had in your discussions? Just feel free to talk as you like. I'm not sure if there's a raise hand. Okay, if there's not, I might move us on. And some of the things you've spoken about actually speak quite well to my next slide here, which is resources from us. So there are multiple resources on NEMA's website, as well as your local civil defence group, that can help in planning. So the tools, they're designed to make the process easier, but they're not one size fits all. So every organisation, community and service area is different. You'll need to adapt them to fit your people, your risks and your operating environment. You can think of them all as starting points, something to help you begin a conversation with your groups and communities and everyone involved in planning. But the real value itself actually comes from how you use them within your teams and with the people that you serve. So Auckland has a fantastic BCP guide, which is available online. There's also a lot of resources available on the Get Ready website if you're looking for planning guides. And from our perspective, we're also developing a guide for disabled people in tandem with Whaikaha. So Remo adapted what was called the Person-Centred Emergency Preparedness Guide in collaboration with an Australian firm called Collaborating for Inclusion. With their agreement, the guide was tailored for the Wellington region, and we're working with Remo and Whaikaha to make that a nationally available guide. So that's going to be released within the next 2 months. So keep an eye out for that if you work with disabled people in your communities. Takatū is available on our website, and it's a learning management system for the emergency management sector. It's managed by us. It's available to anyone with a RealMe login. So most people should have a RealMe login if you do your tax, I think, IRD. I always forget my password, I think, is my main problem. But if you have one, you can log on to Takatū and do these trainings. And some of them are fantastic. They're region specific. They're also hazard specific as well. And there's over 100, I think. So if you're interested in it, have a look at that. I wanted to talk about some of the realities, wins and challenges we've had this year. I say this genuinely. What I've seen work well at every emergency we've had, and to be honest, I've been at NEMA 8 months, and then a year prior to that, I think I've worked through about 5 emergencies now, which is nuts for someone who's just started. Usually they have maybe one every 2 years, but we've been in the bunker more than we would like, to be honest. What I've noticed is that community and volunteer groups are the backbone of disaster management. They're the ones who act first. And yeah, it is one of the things that works the best in emergency management itself, but they're often not recognised enough. I think sometimes that's because they always do it, so don't get that visibility that maybe other groups do. And so I just wanted to call out some of the groups that we have had and may have here today. Places like the Alzheimer's Society, care for our vulnerable people in emergencies. Ronald McDonald House help ensure medical treatment continues during emergencies. Paul Hunter Centre and Hawke's Bay have been critical support hubs during major events like Cyclone Gabrielle. Keeping isolated seniors connected, places like the Digital Seniors, they do that in emergencies as well. Organisations like you also feed hundreds of people. You provide shelter and you distribute donated goods. That's massive in an emergency situation. Many of you are also not disaster specific. You might pivot into logistics and sandbagging and all of those things, environmental recovery and international resilience as well. So I think, it is volunteers and volunteer management forms the backbone of disasters and recovery itself. What I've noted where the system struggles sometimes is the system that we manage and trying to make it easier for people who want to do the right thing. So making it easier is an example for marae to have reimbursement after they've opened up during an emergency is one of the biggest issues at the moment. They always are reimbursed, but sometimes the processes for that are really tedious and bureaucratic, which is punishing for them. And I fully get it. And they have to go through councils who have to go through us. How can we make that easier for them is one of those things we work on daily, to be honest. So it's that systemic level, I think, that could always be better. It's a community level that is always good. The last thing I wanted to talk about is relationships themselves. We work in a complex environment. Sometimes it's low resource, highly stressful. Communities are always under pressure. What matters are the relationships themselves in those events. And that's why things like this these learnings are great, Heidi, as well, to connect with others and that you know who we are and me get to know who you are as well. That actually concludes my presentation. So I might stop sharing. That's my email there if you want to get in touch. If you want to see the bunker, please reach out. We're always happy to do tours. And the last slide I had was just for staying informed. This is all available on our website as well. You probably know about the emergency mobile alerts that you get during emergencies are very loud on your phone, but we also put out comms through social media as well. I'll stop there.